So our next topic is the excretory system, or the system which removes body wastes, eliminates our body wastes. So what do you mean by excretion? You have been learning this term since years, since you were I think in class 3 or 4. So excretion means the removal of unwanted substances from our body. Unwanted can be in many ways. It can be in the form of solid, it can be in the form of liquid, okay, it can be in the form of gas also. Solid is feces, liquid is urine or sweat, and gaseous is carbon dioxide. So excretion is a very important procedure because whatever food we intake, that has a lot of waste materials which is not required by our body. So that waste material has to be removed. So for removal, it has to undergo a process called excretion. Also, the gases that we intake, it contains both carbon dioxide and oxygen. It contains more of oxygen obviously, but when it is utilized in the body, it will be converted to carbon dioxide. So that extra carbon dioxide has to be removed. Also, for the cooling of our body, the excessive water which is present in our body, that has to be removed in the form of sweat. So that is another form of excretion. So this chapter we are basically going to deal with the urinary system, which is also a part of the excretory system. So don't get confused between excretory system and urinary system. Both are completely different. Excretory system means the systems which remove all the waste materials. But urinary system specifically means removal of nitrogenous substances. We are going to learn about it in the later parts of the chapter. So what are the substances which need to be removed? Like I told you, carbon dioxide, excessive water vapor which is removed in the form of gas through our body. Next are the nitrogenous wastes which are removed by our which is purified by our kidneys and then removed in the form of urine or feces. Next we have excessive salts and vitamins and other ions which are not essential in our body, that is also removed by urination itself. Excessive water and bile pigments, the pigments in the bile juice which is present in our liver, which is excess, which is not required in our body, that is also removed. So I told you about carbon dioxide and water, how it is removed, and about nitrogenous metabolic waste, we'll come to that later. Excessive salts are also removed by the kidneys. We will learn about it in the chapter. Water is removed through urination obviously, and along with feces also, although we are not able to see it specifically, but water is also removed in that way. Also bile pigments, we will learn how it is removed. So talking about nitrogenous metabolic wastes, what are these? The first line has included the three types of nitrogenous metabolic wastes which are there in our body: urea, uric acid and ammonia. These are produced mainly in the liver from the dead protein remains of the other tissues that are brought to it. So whenever we eat anything that is proteinaceous, chicken, egg, etc., the excessive nutrient or the proteins which are not utilized, that has to be removed, okay, and that is done by the liver itself. We have learned in the previous chapter in circulatory system that liver stores the excessive food and it also removes toxins from our body. So whatever nitrogenous waste is produced in our body is primarily done by the liver. Any extra amino acids cannot be stored in the body. So whatever protein is excess, we cannot store it in our body. It has to be eliminated, otherwise it can cause problems. They are broken down in the liver to produce usable, also storable glucose and urea that has to be excreted out. So a part of the protein which needs to be utilized, that is converted into glucose, and the rest of it which is unused or which is not important, that is converted into urea, and that has to be removed, otherwise it can cause a lot of issues in our body. So later what happens, the kidney will convey this excessive things, the unwanted things to the kidney. The liver will the liver will convey these excessive things into the kidney, and from there it will be purified and it will be removed in the form of urine. Urea is highly poisonous. If allowed to accumulate in the blood to a certain level, it causes death. Yes. So the people who have to undergo dialysis, the major cause is excessive urea in the blood. The kidneys are not functioning properly. As a result, urea is not getting eliminated. So if that happens over a long period of time, the person can die also. Urea is excreted through the kidneys. Also excessive water and vitamins and all, that is also removed through our kidneys itself. Now talking about bile pigments, I don't remember if I told about it in the previous video, but there are two bile pigments. One is bilirubin and one is biliverdin. So mainly bilirubin, which is the yellowish color, which is released in larger amounts when we have jaundice, so that is generally removed by the liver. So how it is produced, let's see. Bile pigments are the breakdown products of the hemoglobin of the dead RBCs. So when the RBCs die, the hemoglobin is also broken down, and the remains which are there, that is known as the various pigments which is present in the liver, bilirubin and biliverdin. The liver is extracted from the circulation and excrete into the bile juice poured into the duodenum through the common bile duct. You have studied about this in the digestion chapter, that liver will release bile juice. So that bile juice contains these yellowish pigments, bilirubin and biliverdin. So these pigments are also not very essential in our body. It has to be removed, and it is removed in the form of solid waste, which is fecus. And this is the major reason why fecus have a yellowish tinge to it, because of the bile pigments. So people who have jaundice, their urination also becomes very yellowish because of excessive bilirubin and biliverdin, and also their fecus appears to be much more yellowish in nature because of this particular reason. Some of these pigments are excreted in urine, yes. Sometimes if we don't drink enough water, our urination becomes yellowish. This is also primarily because of the same reason. So excretion is not just removal of urine, but removal of all harmful substances from our body. So what are the excretory organs? The major one is kidney, obviously. The second one is sweat glands, which remove sweat and salts. And also we have the lungs for the removal of carbon dioxide. But this chapter mainly deals with urinary system, kidneys. So let's see. As you can see the structure of the kidney on the right hand side, the lower one, there are two kidneys. One is a little above the other, which I'll tell you why. And both the kidneys have two glands on top of it, which are called the adrenal glands, which we'll learn in the chapter endocrine system. So from the kidneys, two small pipes come out, which are known as the ureter, which actually carry the urine, and then it goes and gets stored in the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder has an opening called urethra, which is guarded by the sphincter muscles. The sphincter muscles are like doors. When pressure is very high, they will open and automatically urine will be removed from your body through the urethra. But the urinary bladder is capable of storing urine for quite a good amount of time because it has a good amount of space in it. Right? So that's why we do not feel the urge to urinate every time we drink water, because there is a storage organ out there. So this is the basic structure. So the kidney has two vessels which move out of it and which come into it. First one is the renal vein, which carries deoxygenated blood, and it goes and joins the lower vena cava, or you can say the posterior vena cava, which we have learnt in circulation. Next, there is another blood vessel which is known as the renal artery, which is actually coming from the aorta. The aorta was giving oxygenated blood to the various parts of the body. So that aorta is branched and it moves to the various body parts, and it also moves to the kidney, and in the kidney that artery is known as renal artery. So it is also a little shocking to hear that although veins contain deoxygenated blood, but this renal vein also contains urea free blood. There is no nitrogenous waste. There is respiratory waste in it, there is carbon dioxide in it, but it does not have any nitrogenous waste. But on the other hand, renal artery contains the dirty blood, or you can say the nitrogenous waste blood. Although it contains oxygen, but it contains nitrogenous waste also. So how is it purified? We are going to learn in the later parts of the chapter. So let's move on to the next part. As you can see on the right hand side, there is a figure of the kidney in cross section. It is very clearly drawn, and you can see that there are basically two structures. One is the cortex, which is the outer part, and there is an inner medulla. So these two names are essential, and inside you can see there are conical structures called pyramids. And then you also have certain projections which are known as papilla in it, which are actually the projections of the pelvis, and from there it is moving to the ureter. So the ureter was this particular thing, this one. So this is the ureter, which was carrying the urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder, through which it was later removed. So these are the names which has to be there in your memory, because in board exam such questions always come that you have to label. So ureter goes to the urinary bladder. Over here you can also see another structure called the hilum. Actually, hilum is the point of attachment of the kidney to the ureter. And also you can see renal artery and renal vein, which are the blood vessels entering and leaving the kidney. Renal artery contains dirty blood, dirty in the sense it contains nitrogenous waste, but renal vein, it contains purified blood, that means it has no nitrogenous waste in it. So this is the internal structure of the kidney. A longitudinal section of the kidney shows two main regions, an outer dark cortex, so the cortex is darker in color, and an inner medulla, which is lighter in color. And then I told you there are certain conical shaped structures which are known as pyramids, and from each pyramid there comes out certain projections which are known as papilla. The kidney is composed of a number of small uriniferous tubules which are known as nephrons. You have studied about this in the lower classes. So as you know that every place in our body, be it our nervous system, be it our digestive system, or be it our urinary system, now they do not contain a lot of large objects. There are certain small cells in it which are actually increasing the surface area, so that a lot of work is done but in a very short amount of time, and also the blood is purified or any other process is done to a very good level. So these nephrons or these uriniferous tubules are very small, and since they are small, they are numerous in numbers, and since they are numerous in number, they increase the surface area to such a high extent that the process of filtration of blood in our body is done very quickly. So this is the reason why nephrons are provided. They actually do the process of purification, which we will learn, and they are numerous in numbers just in order to increase the surface area. They are also known as the structural and the functional units of the kidney. As we know, cells are known as the structural and functional unit of a living body. Similarly, nephrons are the functional and structural units of the kidney itself. So now we are going to learn about the structure of a kidney tubule or the structure of a nephron. So it has the following parts. As you can see, a Bowman's capsule, which is the beginning. Then we have the PCT or the proximal or first convoluted tubule. It is called convoluted because it is very highly coiled. Next we have the middle U-shaped part, which is known as the loop of Henle, as you can see in the figure. And next we have the distal convoluted tubule or DCT, the last part. And from there it is going to the collecting duct where urine is collected, and then it moves to the ureter. So what are these parts? Let us know in detail. Bowman's capsule. It is a thin walled cup. It looks like a cup, as you can see, and it is very thin. It has just a single layer of cell, something like a hollow ball pressed deep on one side. So it is like a cavity. Its hollow internal space continues into the tubule. So the hollow place, from the hollow space comes out a tubular structure which moves into to form the PCT and loop of Henle and DCT respectively. Inside the cavity, as you can see, there is a bunch of capillaries, blood capillaries. It is like a knot. It is numerous in number. This is known as glomerulus. It is a capillary network. So from where does it come? It comes from the renal artery. Like I told you, artery contains nitrogenous waste blood. So obviously the artery requires purification. The blood in the artery requires purification. So the renal artery will form this structure. So the renal artery moves into the Bowman's capsule where it breaks up into capillaries called the glomerulus, and then after ultrafiltration, which is the process we will learn, it will again form another artery. This is what happens. The Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus together, this entire structure together, the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule together, they are known as Malpighian capsule or renal capsule. Very important. Next we have the proximal or first convoluted tubule. This is the first part, or you can say the first tube which comes out of the Bowman's capsule, as you can see in the figure. Both the Bowman's capsule and the proximal convoluted part lie in the cortex, giving it a dotted appearance. Very important question. So questions come like this, that why the cortex has a dotted appearance. The cortex of the kidney, the upper part of the kidney, has a little dotted appearance. It looks as if dots have been made on it. Why? Because the Bowman's capsule and the proximal convoluted tubule is present in the cortex region, and the rest of the parts are present in the medulla region. Okay, so this is the reason why the structure of the cortex appears to be a little dotted. It is a little darker. Next, the middle part, which is known as the U-shaped part or the loop of Henle. It is like a hairpin, as you can see. It is not convoluted, it is not coiled, it is straight. It runs in medulla to turn back and to re-enter the cortex to continue in the next convoluted region of the tubule. So it moves into the medulla. That means the loop of Henle part is present in the medulla, and again when it moves out, it again moves back to the cortex. This is the thing. So if a question comes that is the loop of Henle present in the cortex or in the medulla, the answer will be medulla. So it is in the center. You will learn about this in class 11, that what is the role of each of these tubules. For now we will just learn about the Bowman's capsule. Next is the distal convoluted tubule. The distal convoluted tubule also lies in the cortex. So in the medulla region only one part lies, which is the loop of Henle. Very important. It moves, it is actually the part which is away, the farthest away from the Bowman's capsule, and from here we will get our collecting duct. The urine will pass through the entire tube. It will undergo a lot of processes, removal and addition of substances. It is a part of class 11's syllabus, and then it will open into the collecting duct where actually the urine is getting stored, or basically from there the urine will move to the ureter. The collecting duct receives the contents of many kidney tubules. So all the various nephrons, just imagine there are 10 nephrons. So all the nephrons will release their contents into the collecting duct, all of them together. And it will be poured out as urine to the ureter, and it will move through the ureter to the urinary bladder, from where it will be expelled later on. So this is the entire procedure. So from where do we get blood supply to the renal tubules? I told you it is actually coming from the renal artery, because the renal artery contains nitrogenous waste, but I'll tell you in detail in the next video what is the entire internal structure. The physical properties of urine, which we all have seen obviously. First of all, the color, it is clear yellow. It is yellowish, light yellowish in color, but it is clear. If it is not clear, that means we are suffering from some disorder. So why is it colored? Why it is yellowish in color? Because of urochrome. It's very important. Questions can come from this topic. So volume, it depends 1 to 1.5 liter depending upon the amount of water intake and also depending upon the weather conditions. pH is almost 5 to 8. So it can be slightly acidic, it can also be slightly basic. It's not very like over a range or neutral. It can be anything depending upon our diet obviously. If urine is not treated, what happens? It will give a foul smell, because the urine will, whatever urea or uric acid is present in the urine, it will break down into ammonia, and that's why we get a very bad smell. So specific gravity is not essential. And what are the constituents of urine? What is present in it? Urea is present, creatinine is present. Creatinine is a very important constituent because it is used in a lot of tests, pathological tests. Uric acid and other substances, and it also contains salts such as sodium chloride, potassium chloride, ammonia and other substances. So basically it contains a lot of water, 95% of water, and the rest 5% is of solid wastes. So along with these substances, there can also be certain substances, certain medicines such as penicillin or excessive vitamins, whatever antibiotic we take. Whenever we are sick, the doctor gives us antibiotics. Those antibiotics, the excessive part is also removed through the urine. If there are these things in urine, then it can be a cause of concern. For example, blood cells, which is also known as hematuria. If blood is released along with urine, that is a major cause of concern. That means either there is a problem in the urinary tract or there is a problem with your kidneys. So it's very advisable to go and see a doctor immediately. Next is glucose, or the condition is called glycosuria. People who have diabetes mellitus, we will learn about this in endocrine system. Their urine is sweet, actually sweet, because ants come to lick the urine of a diabetic person. So that is a cause of concern again. And then we have albumin. Albumin is actually protein. It's a very risky case. People who have very, very high blood pressure, for them this condition happens. Now if the person's urine is tasteless, that means there is excessive water. Actually urine, it is very awkward to talk about the taste of urine, but it is slightly saltish. But if it is completely tasteless, that means the person is suffering from diabetes insipidus. This also you will learn in endocrine system. There are two types of diabetes basically. And then if there are excessive bile pigments, excessive yellowish fluid, excessive yellowish color in the urine. That can be due to jaundice or due to other problems such as anemia or liver cirrhosis. Liver cirrhosis is like the complete breakdown of the liver. So these can happen. So sometimes what happens, many people face kidney failure. What does it mean? The kidneys are not in proper working condition, both of them together. So if we do not have a single kidney, we can still survive. We can survive with one kidney. But if both the kidneys fail, under that condition what happens, either you have to go for a kidney transplant, which is the best method, but it is quite costly. So until and unless a donor is available to you, what happens, people undergo the process of dialysis, which is also known as the artificial kidney. So just like a normal kidney would function, it would purify the blood of its nitrogenous wastes. The same thing is done by kidney, by this artificial kidney, also by the dialysis machine. So a question might come, give the name for artificial kidney. So the answer would be dialysis machine. And this is used only when both the kidneys fail working. The remaining parts of the chapter, like osmoregulation or the blood vessels entering and leaving the Bowman's capsule, we shall cover it in the next video.